Hey guys, I'm JC and today we're playing Jinnie Fay, Jetmir 2nd. This is a token deck that looks to abuse all token types by converting them into cats and dogs and then using those cats and dogs to kill its opponents. If you want to see how this deck was built, then swing by the channel where we have a deck tech discussing all of the included cards as well as the overall strategy. Let's see if Jinnie can overwhelm our opponents with sheer numbers. Alright guys, let's see who we're playing today. We have Kwain, Itinerant Meddler, we have Bosh, Iron Golem, and we also have Gyruda, Doom of Depths. Alright, if we look at our opening hand, we can't keep it, it's a single land, so we'll mulligan. That second hand is a lot more keepable. We have a turn 1 Ragavan, we have Aura Shards to take out any artifacts and enchantments that give us a problem. Monologue Tax is a token creator, so I think we can keep this. Alright, and we draw a Professional Facebreaker for turn. Well, that's going to be really nice to curve into with Ragavan. So let's start by playing Flooded Strand. We'll crack it straight away. We'll put our Sacred Foundry into play. We'll pay 2 life so it comes in untapped. And let's cast our Ragavan. And that'll be our turn done. Kwain plays a land. They have it come into play untapped so they lose 2 life. And now they cast a Weathered Wayfarer. Pay a white, tap it, search your library for a land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Activate only if an opponent controls more lands than you. And that is it for their turn. Bosh plays a land for turn. But that is it for them. Gyruda just plays a tap land for turn, a Myriad Landscape, and they pass it over to us. We draw a land for turn. Alright, well to start with, we'll go to combat. We'll hit the Bosh player because they're probably going to be an artifact deck, so we're likely to cast more things from them if we hit them. Damage goes through, that triggers Ragavan. Let's see what we get. It looks like we hit a Scrapyard Recombiner. Okay, well that can definitely stay in exile. So second main phase, we'll play our Forest for turn, and let's get down our Professional Facebreaker. And that's going to be our turn done, and quite a strong start from our deck. Let's hope we keep up this pace. Kwain starts by activating their Weathered Wayfarer, so let's see what land they find. They find themselves an Ancient Tomb. They play that Ancient Tomb for turn. And now they cast a Howling Mine. At the beginning of each player's draw step, if Howling Mine is untapped, that player draws an additional card. Well, we're definitely happy to see that, especially with our mana advantage at the moment. And that is it for them. Howling Mine triggers on Bosh's draw step. I'll draw an additional card. They play a fetch land for turn. They crack it straight away. They put a mountain into play. Now they cast a Mana Crypt. And then they follow that up with a Vidalcan Ori, so they can cast spells as though they had flash. And that is going to be it for them. Howling Mine triggers on Gyruda's draw step. They play a land for turn. And now they cast a Silvermere. And that is going to be it for their turn. Alright, well we untap with both our creatures, which is really good news. We draw an Adeline for turn. That's even better. So our draws just keep getting better and better. Howling Mine does trigger. Let's see what we draw from that. And we get a Field of the Dead. Alright, well let's play our Snow-Covered Plains. Let's cast Adeline. Now we'll move to combat. We'll send Ragavan at Bosh again. Professional Facebreaker at Kwain. That's going to trigger Adeline, making a 1/1 attack in each of our opponents. It's unlikely Gyruda's going to block here, so we probably will get a treasure from them. The damage goes through. That triggers Ragavan and Professional Facebreaker 3 times. So now we'll make 3 treasure tokens. Let's see what Ragavan exiles from Bosh. Ooh, and that's a big one for their deck. We hit their Mycosynth Golem. We're happy to leave that in exile as well. Now in our second main phase, I think I'll actually get down Monologue Tax here, seeing as the Kwain player is drawing the rest of our opponent's cards. It's likely they're going to be casting more than one spell a turn, especially if they want to try to catch up to us. That goes through, and that is going to be our turn done. And not a bad board position on turn 3, that's for sure, especially from this token deck. Token decks tend to be a little less feared than a lot of other archetypes in Magic, so I'm glad we're doing it proud at the moment. Though one board wipe can undo all of that. It looks like Kwain starts by activating their Weathered Wayfarer again. They find themselves a Reliquary Tower. Very good card in a Kwain deck when they plan on drawing a lot of cards. And now they cast a Crawl Space. No more than 2 creatures can attack you each combat. Well, that is a problem for our deck. Luckily, we do have Aura Shards in our hand, so provided that does resolve, we'll be able to answer all of this pretty easily. And that is it for the Kwain player. Mana Crypt triggers on Bosh's upkeep. Let's see how they go with the flip. They lose it, taking 3 damage. They draw an additional card thanks to Howling Mine. Now they play Inerza's Tower for turn. And that is going to be it for their turn, seeing as they have Vidalcan Ori, so they can cast things at flash speed. Howling Mine triggers on Gyruda's draw step. They play a land for turn. And now they start by casting Pyramid of the Pantheon. You can pay 2 tap, add 1 mana of any color, put a brick counter on it, And then tap add 3 mana of any one color, activate only if there are 3 or more brick counters on it. And finally, they crack their Myriad Landscape. So they're going to put 2 basic lands into play tapped. And that is going to be it for their turn. We draw a Grand Crescendo for turn, so that's really, really great. Protection, and it can put a lot of bodies down on the battlefield. We also draw a Black Market Tycoon, thanks to the Howling Mine. So I think what we'll do to start is we'll try to resolve our Aura Shards now while we have the chance. Definitely going to put our opponents on high alert, but we have to do it, especially while we have this board state. Okay, that resolves pretty quickly. Now let's move to combat. And that actually causes the Bosh player to scoop. Oh, we have another scoop from 2 of our opponents here. Okay, so the Aura Shards seem to be enough to cause our opponents to quit it up there. Let's see if Gyruda hangs around. It's a little unfortunate for them because now they're getting hit with all of the attacks. All right, that triggers Adeline. We'll only make 1 human token this time, but the Aura Shards trigger will put towards the Silvermere. That gets taken out. Damage goes through. That triggers Professional Facebreaker and Ragavan. Now in our second main phase, I think we'll just play our Field of the Dead tapped, and we'll hold up our Grand Crescendo. So in case a board wipe does come down from Gyruda, we'll be able to protect our creatures. And we'll pass it over to our opponent. Gyruda plays a land for turn. Now they start by casting Opt, scry 1 and draw a card. And they're just going to pass the turn there. We draw a land for turn. Let's start by getting down our commander, Jinnie Fay. That goes through, that triggers Aura Shards, we'll take out the Pyramid. Next we'll move to combat. We'll send everything in. That triggers Adeline, making another 1/1 human. That will trigger Jinnie Fay. We'll make a 3/1 dog. It does trigger our Aura Shards, I'll just take out our Monologue tax. I know we don't have to, but why not? Our opponent here was really disadvantaged by our other opponents scooping up, so we'll try to help them out even just a little bit. That knocks them down to 7, that triggers Facebreaker and Ragavan. We're going to decline here, we'll just make the treasure token. We'll also decline again, just making another treasure token with Professional Facebreaker. We did hit an Altar of the Pantheon from the Gyruda player, and I think we'll just pass the turn here. Gyruda plays a land for turn. And now we see their commander come down, Gyruda Doom of Depths. When Gyruda ETBs, each player mills 4 cards, put a creature card with an even mana value from among the milled cards onto the battlefield under your control. Alright, well they didn't get anything there, and they didn't hit anything from us either. So an unfortunate hit for them. And they scoop it up there. Alright guys, that is the game done. Let's go to the review and discuss what happened. Alright, I don't have much to say about this game. We drew the God Hand and we got to see what that could do. Now this was a short game and I had more time to record today, so let's go to a second game. Okay guys, we're in the second game now. Let's see what our opponents are playing. We have Gonti, Lord of Luxury. We have Lonis, Cryptozoologist. And we also have Araumi of the Dead Tide. Okay, if we look at our opening hand, it's pretty good. We have 2 forms of ramp, so we can get Jinnie Fay out quickly. We also have Warstorm Surge. That's going to be able to clear the board up of any problematic creatures. And a little bit of recursion in Eternal Witness. So no real token makers, but hopefully we draw into it. So we'll keep this. This is definitely going to be a fairer start than what we had last game, that's for sure. Araumi just starts by playing a tap land for turn. And they pass it to us. We draw a land for turn. So we'll just start by playing our Temple Garden. We'll lose 2 life. And we'll play our Llanowar Elves. And that's going to be us done. Gonti plays a land for turn. And that is it for them. Lonis starts by playing a tapped Path of Ancestry. And that is it for them. Araumi plays a land. And now they cast an Arcane Signet. And that is it for their turn. We draw another land for turn. So we'll just play our Spectator Seeding. And let's cast Jinnie Fay. And then we'll pass it from there. And let's just keep our fingers crossed that we draw into one of our token makers soon. Gonti plays a land for turn. And now they cast a Mind Stone. But then they pass it over after that. Lonis plays a land. And now they cast their commander, Lonis, which does trigger their Path of Ancestry. So they're going to be able to scry 1. Lonis says whenever another non-token creature ETBs under your control, investigate. And you can tap, sack X clues. Target opponent reveals the top X cards of their library. You may put a non-land permanent card with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield under your control. That player puts the rest on the bottom of their library in a random order. And that's it for the Lonis player. Araumi plays a land. Now they cast their commander, Araumi of the Dead Tide. Tap, exile cards from your graveyard equal to the number of opponents you have. Target creature card in your graveyard gains Encore until end of turn. The Encore cost is equal to its mana cost. Now they cycle a Baron Moor. So they'll discard that and then draw a card. And that's it for them. Unfortunately, we draw yet another land for turn. So this turn we'll just play our Brushland. We'll get down our Avacyn's Pilgrim. Next we'll move to combat. We'll swing in at the Gonti player. We've got to get the damage in while we can because Gonti does make a good blocker, having Death Touch. They're also a mono black player, so they likely use their life as a resource. And that is it for our turn. Gonti plays a land, a Deserted Temple, so they can use it to untap a land. Very good if they end up getting a Cabal Coffers out. And now they cast their commander, Gonti, Lord of Luxury. Death Touch, and when Gonti ETBs, look at the top 4 cards of target opponent's library, exile one of them face down, then put the rest on the bottom of that library in a random order. You may look at and cast that card for as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast that spell. Okay, who does Gonti target here? And it looks like they target Araumi here. And that is it for their turn. Lonis starts by playing a land for turn. And now they cast Gyruda, Friend of the Forest. That does trigger Path of Ancestry, so they get to scry 1. And Gyruda says tokens you control have tap, add green. That triggers Lonis, so they'll make a clue token. And that is it for their turn. Araumi starts by casting a Burnished Heart. You can pay 3 and sack it to search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. And that is it for them. Alright, fingers crossed we have a good draw here. Okay, Professional Facebreaker, that isn't too bad. Not too bad at all. Unfortunately, we don't have great attacks here. Araumi can block, Gonti will probably block, so they can recast their commander again. Probably only going to be the Lonis player that we can try to swing into with our Jinnie Fay. The question is, would they be willing to trade one of their cards there? I don't think they would, and we do have enough mana if we need to, we can recast Jinnie Fay. So let's start by casting our Professional Facebreaker. Now let's move to combat. Let's put the Lonis player to the test. Let's see how worried they are about us making a treasure token / dog. We'll swing in towards Lonis. Worst case scenario, they block. We'll just take out Gyruda, but they definitely don't block. That was pretty quick. They know how powerful Gyruda is going to be in that deck. That triggers our Professional Facebreaker. We'll use Jinnie Fay to make a 3/1 dog instead. And that's going to be easier to trigger Professional Facebreaker's ability next turn. 3/1 start to become a lot more scary, especially when we can make a lot of them. Finally, we'll just play our planes for turn. And then we'll just pass it over from there. Gonti plays a land. Now they start by casting Malachur Rebirth, targeting their commander. So it is going to be able to return to the battlefield if it dies. They do lose 2 life to casting that. Now they cast Fell Stinger. It has exploit, so they can sack a creature when it ETBs, and when they do exploit a creature, target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. So they sacrifice Gonti here. They start by resolving Gonti's ability first. Let's see who they target. It looks like they target us this time. Alright, let's keep our fingers crossed they don't get anything too juicy. Now Fell Stinger resolves, drawing them 2 cards and losing them 2 life. And it looks like that's it for the Gonti player. Lonis starts by casting Fairy Artisans. Flying, whenever a non-token creature ETB is under an opponent's control, create a token that's a copy of that creature except it's an artifact in addition to its other types, then exile all other tokens created with Fairy Artisans. That triggers Lonis, making them a clue token. Well, that's going to be quite an interesting creature with Gonti as they keep having it re-enter the battlefield. That's going to give the Lonis players some extra card advantage and benefit off Gonti's ability. Now they also cast Jacob Hawkham Inspector. Tap, draw a card, then exile a card from your hand face down. You may look at that card for as long as it remains exiled. You may pay 6 if you do transform Jacob Inspector. Then at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library face down. You may look at that card for as long as it remains exiled. Once during each of your turns, you may play a land or cast a spell from among the cards exiled with this permanent without paying its mana cost. That does trigger Lonis again, making another clue. And the great thing with Gyruda is those tokens can tap straight away, so really powerful synergy with Lonis there. And that is it for their turn. Araumi starts by sacking their Burnished Heart. So they'll put 2 basic lands into play tapped. And that is going to be it for their turn. Redraw an Aura Shards for turn. Okay, well that's really nice to see. That'll help us start to clear up some of those clue tokens and just general artifacts around the board. But I don't want to do that just yet. I think we do need to clear up some of these creatures. That Gyruda is getting the Lonis player a little bit too much value. Let's start by playing our Mountain for turn. And now let's cast Warstorm Surge. That goes through. So now let's move to combat. We'll send Facebreaker towards Araumi. And then we'll send a dog as well as our Llanowar Elves towards the Gonti player. That should guarantee us that we get 2 tokens, which will be 2 triggers from Jinnie Fay. And they do block the Llanowar Elves. Araumi does try to block Professional Facebreaker there, but they might forget that it has Menace. The damage goes through. We lose Llanowar Elves, but that does trigger Professional Facebreaker twice. We'll make a dog. That's going to trigger Warstorm Surge. We'll target Gyruda here. The second Facebreaker triggers. We'll make another dog. And we'll actually target Jacob. And after all that, that will be our turn done. So Warstorm Surge, if it hangs around, is going to be a powerful control piece for all the creatures on the board. But we can also get aura shards down as well. That's going to basically take care of most permanent types we care about. What we just really want to see is another token maker. Now, Gonti does start by playing a land for turn. Now they cast an extra planar lens. When it ETBs, they can exile a land they control. Whenever a land with the same name as the exiled card is tapped for mana, its controller adds 1 mana of any type that land produced. That will actually help the Araumi player as well because they do have basic swamps. So they exile a land here. Now they use their Deserted Temple to untap one of their swamps. And then they cast a Necropotence. Skip your draw step. Whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard and pay 1 life, exile the top card of your library face down, put that card into your hand at the beginning of your next end step. Okay, well we have to try to start aggressively attacking the Gonti's life total as soon as we can. So they get the minimal amount of use out of that Necropotence, but unfortunately, right now, they are going to get a good hit from it. Let's see how many times they activate it. And it looks like they decided to activate it 4 times in total. Now they move to their end step, Necropotence triggers. They put all 4 cards into their hand. So they will have to discard 1, which will go into exile. And that is it for their turn. And it looks like they just discard a Sign in Blood. Lonis starts by casting a Courser of Crewfix. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play lands from the top of your library, and whenever a land ETB is under your control, you gain 1 life. That triggers their commander, so they make a clue token. And we can see they currently have a land on top. Now they do play a land for turn, which triggers their Courser of Crewfix. And the next card on top is a Glasspool Mimic. Now they do move to combat and they swing at us with the Fairy Artisans. We'll have to take the damage. That takes us down to 36, and that is it for the Lonis player. Alright, so the Araumi player can potentially have a very big turn here, with 3 swamps all tap in for double mana. They start by casting a Soul Ring. Next they cast a Buried Alive. Search your library for up to 3 creature cards, put them into your graveyard, then shuffle. Well, that is a scary card to see in an Araumi deck, so let's see what they find. Looks like they get a Kakusho, a Massacre Worm, and a Peregrine Drake. All problematic creatures, particularly that Massacre Worm. That's going to nearly wipe our board, basically. And they do activate Araumi targeting the Massacre Worm here. That is pretty much going to wipe the entire board and take a lot of our life totals with it. In fact, that may actually kill us here, I think, if I do the maths right. 3, 6. They'll each hit us for 6, 36. So that's going to be exactly enough damage to take us out. So that is a pretty good job there by the opponent. Or do we have a response from the Gonti player here? No, it looks like they must have accidentally hit their swamp. Lonis responds by sacking all their clue tokens and looking at the top X cards of our library. Let's see if they get anything good off of us. And it looks like all they find is a Sylvan Library. Alright, that goes through. A lot of Massacre Worm triggers go on the stack. Alright, so that knocks us out of the game. It looks like Gonti's on 14 and Lonis is on 20 life. But Araumi still has to go to combat with their 3 Massacre Worms, so they can take out Gonti here if they want to. Now Araumi casts Reanimate, targeting their Peregrine Drake. So when that ETBs, they are going to be able to untap 5 lands. So it looks like that extra planar lens really ended up hurting the Gonti player. In fact, it hurt the table more than what they were expecting. It's always the issue with cards that you play that really help your opponents as well, especially if you can't really break synergy with it first. It can unfortunately come back to bite you in the butt pretty hard, like we've seen in this game here. So Peregrine Drake ETBs, they untap 5 lands. So it looks like they only send both of the Massacre Worms in towards the Gonti player. They must want to keep them around for the double mana, which also makes sense. That is a good tactic. But then again, you also run into the problem now that when Gonti untaps with 7 cards in hand, do they have an answer to what you're doing? So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. It looks like Gonti does respond here. They cast Infernal Grasp, targeting one of the Massacre Worms. Destroy target creature, you lose 2 life. So now it looks like they're only taking 6. Now the Massacre Worm does get sacrificed at the end step. And sorry, I must have been mistaken. Maybe one of the Massacre Worms was going towards Lonis. And now we move to the Gonti player's turn. They play a land. Next, they use their Deserted Temple to untap one of their swamps, just helping them to generate more mana. Now Gonti sacrifices their Mind Stone to draw a card. And now they cast a Grey Merchant of Asphodel. When it ETBs, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. That puts them back up to 22. Now they also play a Burnished Heart. In their second main phase, they activate Necropotence. Let's see how deep they decide to go. And it looks like they go 3 deep. Now we move to the Lonis player's turn. And it looks like the Lonis player decides to scoop it up there. So now we move straight to the Araumi player's turn. It looks like we have a battle between the Mono Black deck and the Dimir deck. Put your bets down, people. Let's see how we go here. Normally my money would be on the Araumi player here, but just with the Gonti player having access to that Necropotence and being able to refill their hand each turn, That does give them a lot of advantage. And Araumi doesn't really have a full graveyard at the moment. Now they do start by casting Feed the Swarm. Okay, I spoke too soon. Destroy target creature or enchantment. You lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. Okay, well it looks like we have a more level playing field now. Now Araumi activates their commander. And they're encoring their Kakusho here. So now they move to combat. They swing both Kakusho and Peregrine Drake in at the Gonti player. Now they also cast Search for Azcanta. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put it into your graveyard. Then if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you can transform it. And it allows you to search for non-creature, non-land cards by activating it. Now they sacrifice Kakusho on their end step. They will cause Gonti to lose 5 life and they'll gain 5 life. So Gonti is currently on 7. They're barely holding on at the moment, but mono black decks are notorious for being able to win games on very low life totals. So let's see what they can do with double mana and 7 cards in hand. They start by using Deserted Temple to untap one of their lands. It looks like they're tapping out for something big here. No, they just start by casting Blade of Selves. Equip creature as Myriad, which you can equip for 4. Now they equip the Blade of Selves to the Grey Merchant. I don't know if they know, but that's not really going to have any effect because they are only swinging in at one opponent. Next, they cast an Arcane Signet. And then they crack their Burnished Heart, putting 2 tapped lands into play. They move to combat. They do decide to swing in their Grey Merchant. That does trigger Myriad. But as we mentioned, they don't get a token here. And now we move to the Araumi player's turn. Search for Azcanta triggers on their upkeep. Looks like they decide to keep the card on top. Next, they play an Underworld Hermit. When it ETBs, create a number of 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens equal to your devotion to black, which is currently 3, so they make 3 1/1 squirrels. Now they move to combat. Peregrine and their commander both swing in. That knocks Gonti down to 4 life. Now we move to the Gonti player's turn. They start by playing Cabal Stronghold. So judging by the looks of things, this might be the last turn that Gonti has to try to do something, otherwise they're going to be out of this game. One thing they're definitely not going to have a problem with is mana production, that's for sure. It just really depends on what cards they have in hand. So they start by activating their Cabal Stronghold, then using their Deserted Temple to untap it. So doing that, it brings them up to 11 total mana. Next, they recast their commander Gonti. That triggers its ETB effect, so let's see if they can find anything from the Araumi player's deck. And there is every chance that they do find something useful, because Araumi is going to run a lot of ETB and death trigger type creatures. Next, they cast Mikaeus the Unhallowed. Intimidate, and whenever a human deals damage to you, destroy it. But it looks like we don't even have to read the rest of it, because the Araumi player responds very quickly with a mana drain, countering the spell and adding that much colorless mana next turn. Next, Gonti casts Abhorrent Overlord. It's a flyer. When it ETBs, create a number of 1/1 Harpy tokens with flying equal to your devotion to black, which is currently 6. Okay, well that definitely makes enough blockers there, and they can take out some of those squirrel tokens. So there may be a chance here for the Gonti player. It is a smaller chance, but they may not be out of it just yet. At the very least, they've probably bought themselves a little bit of time. And it looks like the Overlord was a card from the Araumi deck. So Gonti definitely pulled his weight there. And that is it for the Gonti player. Azcanta triggers on Araumi's upkeep. And they just discard an island. Now they will add 6 colorless mana thanks to their mana drain. It looks like they have 14 total mana floating, not including their Arcane Signet and their Sol Ring. They do play a land for turn. It does come into play tap though. And now they cast a Cyclonic Rift Overloaded. Well, that is definitely going to get the job done there. So it looks like this game is going to the Araumi player. Now Araumi uses their leftover mana to recast their Abhorrent Overlord, and the Gonti player just scoops it up there, and that is the game done, guys. Alright, let's go to the review and discuss what happened. Well, that turned out to be a pretty interesting game. We got off to a pretty good start, but then again so did the rest of our opponents. What really made the difference this game was that extra planar lens. When the Araumi player untapped, it gave them the big turn they needed to not only take us out, but reduce the Lonis and Gonti players' life totals very low. Now, when it did eventually become a 1v1 battle between Gonti and Araumi, as much as the Gonti player tried to get back into the game, unfortunately the damage was already done and the Araumi player had just the cards they needed to close out the game. As I mentioned during the video, you have to be really careful when playing a symmetrical piece that amplifies your opponent's resources. You really either want to be able to take advantage of it first, or at the very least know that you have a good chance of winning the game the next turn. Well, that's it for today's videos. Naya recently received a lot of token support, so decks like Jinnie Fay have been able to more consistently produce threatening and resilient board states, which has strengthened tokens as an overall archetype. In my opinion, this has been a great change for the format. Until next time, guys.